let's discuss today what entrepreneurism really is. And the reason for this conversation is because I imagine that most entrepreneurs, such as myself, at least from my opinion, should have to feel sick and tired of hearing a lot of the bull crap about it. And what I mean is the concept of you can A, teach entrepreneurism, and B, that it's a glorious thing. So let's drop some truth bombs about the subject matter. And also, number three, people get entrepreneurs confused with other types of folks or titles or industries. So, number one, what is it? We need to define what entrepreneurism is. It is when an individual sees a market demand and they cannot help nor can they control their vision of absolute just focus on solving that problem relentlessly. That was the word I was looking for. Relentless. They can't help but become relentless about solving that market demand. And, are you listening? I used to think it was they would risk money, but no, they risk everything. Okay? They sacrifice family, they sacrifice their health, they sacrifice sleep, you sacrifice money, you sacrifice time, you sacrifice friendships, you sacrifice everything. When you go back in history and you look at a true entrepreneur, such as Sam Walton, Cornelius Vanderbilt, Rockefeller, the studs, right? Mary Kay, studette. She was freaking Billy. All right? They sacrificed everything, put their money in the line and everything, and they could not stop until that market demand was satisfied. So that's number one. The number two thing is trying to train people in order to have that spirit. It's a spirit. It is not a teaching. It is not a profession, nor is it an industry, an education. It is a spirit, and that's what an entrepreneur is. Okay? So when we try to teach it, we're not teaching entrepreneurism. You may be teaching how to start up a business. You may be teaching how to run a business. You may be teaching how to grow a business, sell a business. But you cannot teach entrepreneurism. And what bothers me most about that is the fact that there's got to be a good portion of the people, because there's very few people that even in today's time and history past that have made it through the lifestyle of entrepreneurism. And we know that by the statistics, quote unquote, that we have, which we all know are off anyway. It's probably more like 99% of businesses fail. Okay? But when you try to teach somebody that and you get them inspired and they catch this desire, emotional desire, or they get this emotion of ambition, and they're like, I'm going to be an entrepreneur. I'm going to innovate and invent something. Right? I'm going to make money. Okay? We could very well be setting these people up for absolutely miserable lives. And potentially ruining everything about their future. Because unlike other educations and areas of study where you do train and get certified and you can get a job, entrepreneurism doesn't work that way. There is no credential, right? There is no certification. And if there is, it's full of shit. Because the reality to it is that if I trained to be a nurse and I got my licenses, I could get a job as a nurse. If I trained to be an attorney, pass my bar, get my law degree, or I get my degree and get my certification to practice law, I most likely can get a job as an attorney, some way, somehow. But if you get a, if you go, you can't be trained and have a certification for entrepreneurism. It doesn't guarantee you any sort of position, because everything's on the line. And so, if you spend your time trying to be something that you're not as an entrepreneur, you could lose everything because you don't have the spirit. The spirit is the certification. All right. So, my main concern and argument against the teaching of it is not necessarily practically speaking, but absolutely spiritually and emotionally speaking, and mentally, psychologically. And I am legitimately concerned about the fad and the hype and the acceleration of the study of entrepreneurism, because we don't know exactly what that's going to do to a bunch of people in about 10 years as far as their careers. And I would caution anybody that is like ready to go out in business on their own. And also it could jumpstart someone that just to do business, and then they fail. And not everybody can handle it because it's a spiritual matter. Now, the other thing is this conversation about who entrepreneurs are. They're not investors. Okay? And so when you're teaching, or when this term entrepreneurism comes out in the open, investors get in line ready for these folks. And any entrepreneur begins working for an investor right off the bat with seed capital rounding and all that kind of stuff, especially mainly from folks that they don't know. They're not angels, as we quote unquote say, friends and family. And if you go down that path as somebody that is claiming to be entrepreneurial, you're not. What you become is, and there's nothing wrong with it, but it's just not entrepreneurism. You become a professional investment collector, and you are more along the lines of something in the finance industry, not entrepreneurism. And there's nothing wrong with it. You can make money doing that. You can build business plans, do great pro formas and forecasts, and you can make connections, and you can go out there and sell your idea, get a few $100,000 or a few million to go against this idea that's been inked to death with forecasts and plans. And then you go on a spree of raising series A, B, C, D, or however you want to go. Maybe go public, maybe get acquired. There's all kinds of things. And there's a lot of that going on out there right now. And that's a business in of itself, but it's not entrepreneurism. That is just some sort of new business trend that's been going on for a decade or so. So, and the other thing about learning how to run a business and all these other things is not necessarily entrepreneurism either. It is learning how to run a business or learning how to grow a business. And again, all those things are okay. But they're not entrepreneurism. So, what we need to do is get in line with what an entrepreneur is. You don't have to be super smart. Okay? You don't have to have a lot of money. You don't have to know people. You don't have to have any connections. You don't have to have any knowledge about what you're getting into. All that stuff is a bunch of bullshit that people have been pouring in. Those are called professional business people and financiers and stocks and capital raising and all that other kind of crap. And that's a trend that's going on, and people raise against that. As an entrepreneur, you don't have to have any of that, and you don't have any of that. As a matter of fact, it's difficult for an entrepreneur to take money because it reduces their equity. So, especially in the beginning. So, the significance of this particular conversation is to be warned as an individual person who is getting in the hype of being an entrepreneur and thinking that's the cool thing to do. I can tell you, I've yet to meet, as a matter of fact, any entrepreneur that can say marvelous, wonderful things. And so we like to bubble up the good news about it because typically it's investors telling you, or organizers, or institutions, or clubs, or freaking all kinds of things. A group of people that are pretty well organized by investors to help start up the entrepreneurism community. And I'm not necessarily against that, but if we're going to stir up entrepreneurism, we need to understand what the freaking hell it is before we start stirring the damn pot. Because stirring the pot, a bunch of young people or older, really younger people, is where I see it, of trying to start a business and they have an idea. You just really have a group of people that have a lot of money that are ready to invest in something to get their money returned. That's what an investor does. They don't do anything else. Somebody that invests in a business without trying to get a profit is typically an entrepreneur, or they have an entrepreneurial intention behind it. There's nothing wrong with investing and wanting a profit whatsoever. As a matter of fact, I do that myself. But when I do that, it is not with the intent to necessarily solve a market demand. It is the intent of having a market demand solved and making a profit off that. An entrepreneur, is someone that will take and go against all odds in order to satisfy that, because it needs to be satisfied, not because of anything else. And so if you're going into business and you're trying to be an entrepreneur because you want to make a shit ton of money in your life, there could very well be a better way to go do it, such as learning how to run a business, building pro formas, going on the investment capital raises, and continuing that trend. But don't take the badge of entrepreneurism when you do that. That is not it. And there's nothing wrong with being that. I'm not that. But don't claim to be an entrepreneur, because you're not. So, it's important that we as Americans understand the definition and we read the right history of the people that are entrepreneurs. Because if you're going to call it that, and that's what it is, this country was built on those people. The ones that went against all odds to satisfy market demand. Of course they do want money. They want to grow and they want to make money. But their intent is beyond that. Way beyond that. It is something that they cannot stop. And that is probably the number one reason why 99% of most businesses fail. But the entrepreneur, when it fails, he finds another market demand. Or he goes about solving the same damn thing over and over again. And most likely and if you really look at it, about every business that is apparently successful today failed 1,000 times over and over before it made it. They just had an entrepreneur that picked their freaking self up and went back at it because they're there to solve a market demand. That's the difference between a founder and an entrepreneur. Not necessarily a founder, but an entrepreneur. So, There you have it.